Thank you for downloading, subscribing, and telling your friends about the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, coming to you from the Kitchen Studios in downtown Raleigh. This episode is sponsored in part by Spot On, tech that helps your business grow, and GigPro. Change the way you find staff with GigPro. Learn more at gigpro.com/NCFB. And Joe Van Gogh Coffee, serving the community from seed to cup. And now, Valentine's Restaurant Lovebirds. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And arg, matey. Go Pirates, as we are talking with the director of the ECU School of Hospitality Leadership, one Mr. Bob O'Halloran. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're going to school today, y'all.
Yeah,
Don't
education
be late.
focus. That's right.
It's time to give those teachers a little what for. Let's get into it. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. No. This is exciting. So our really close friend of the podcast, Aini, or to the rest of the world, Inez Rubistello, who's recently been on the show.
And nominated for a
Person of the Year award.
Pody. An NCFB Pody.
Inez Rubistello, who we just mentioned, was one of the nominees with a great outpour of support for that. But she was the person that put us in touch with Mr. Professor O'Halloran over here to talk about, simply put, hospitality. We spent a lot of time, we as the consensus of the food and beverage industry, not just here on the podcast, talking about culinary school and what it takes to be a chef and what it takes to wield a knife and saute this and create a roux and all that. That's all nonsense, folks. That's just window dressing. The way you run a restaurant, the way you make it in this industry is you learn the art of hospitality. And that's what we're going to learn today. You're going to teach us everything so we don't have to
everything that I know. There you go.
Yeah, so Bob, what I know about schools of hospitality, and I've of course heard of the programs, which I think, in my mind, no disrespect, or the beacons of these things is Cornell has a hotel management and hospitality school. That's probably not exactly the name. And then University of Nevada, Las Vegas also has a very famous program. So those are the two beacons that I know of. So where do you guys fit in there?
We're not nearly as big or as old as either of those or whatever. Cornell is the oldest program in the country, dating back. I can't give you their dates. I'm not going to promote Cornell. I'm a Michigan State guy myself, so it's which also has a long-standing hospitality program. And UNLV basically on HARA money basically was endowed to
on what money?
HARA, Bill HARA, who was
like the casino,
the casinos or whatever back in the day. Yeah, that was like their initial grant or fundraising effort there or whatever, and they're right there in the middle of it, so it's kind of a great deal. ECU has been a regional type university or whatever. I mean, this is why, coming from the outside, you grow to have some resentment of Chapel Hill and Raleigh. From that, that's all right. They don't. Yeah. Neither of them have hospitality programs, so I feel pretty good about that.
And none of them are listening because they saw, the guy from ECU's on. Never mind, we'll pass this episode.
That's right. Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. But we're the largest hospitality program in the state.
Okay.
Within the system, there are 5 programs in the system, and then there's others like Johnson & Wales and Charlotte and so on and so forth.
Sure. Is Johnson & Wales a hospitality program or strictly a culinary program?
They still have both. They have a culinary side, and then they have a hospitality business degree.
Okay.
We're in a college of business, which makes us in a smaller group within hospitality programs in general, because we're in a college of business. And
does that mean if you graduate this program, you graduate with an MBA, a master's in business?
No. This is an undergraduate. Well, we have a master's program, but not an MBA. Where we have students that do both, but it's a Bachelor of Science in Hospitality Management.
Okay.
So basically, we're very much a business program. So to your remark before about culinary programs, somebody comes to me, mom and dad, and junior or whoever, I want to be a chef. Ooh, you're in the wrong place. I'll tell you how to run the business. I'll tell you how to, do your cost controls and so on and so forth. And the faculty are really good at that. And so we'll teach you how to make money.
Yeah. If you want to be a chef owner.
Oh, well, there you go. You go.
You're in the right place.
Then you're in the right place from that standpoint. We've been, depending on whose ratings you believe in and so on and so forth, you can do our program 100% online or face-to-face. Our traditional students are obviously the on-campus kids and so on and so forth. We've been rated like 21st for best value in the country, whatever. And
There's only 20 schools, though. It's really lousy.
Max, from the director of the School of Comedy within the NCFB University.
Unfortunately, that's an issue these days because there's, in my opinion, too many four-year programs of hospitality in the country. We went from, back in the day from 120 or whatever to we're probably closer to 300 now.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, we just don't need any more at the four-year level. And I'm talking nationwide and so on and so forth because there's only so many students you're going to have. And the numbers are tough these days. I mean, everybody's competing for the same students, given that the high school populations are dwindling.
So obviously you're a business and you're trying to put butts in seats. Like you have to,
we got to recruit.
So you're recruiting. You're like, hey, you should do this.
Yeah, I mean, we have an admissions department, obviously, at ECU, but the school recruits.
So
the faculty are always waving the flag. I recruit, and so on and so forth.
I always thought that it's such an ironic position, right? Because you're recruiting, you want people to come to your school, but yet there are still academic standards that you have to hit. So
Absolutely.
There might be somebody that wants to come to your school, but you can't let them in the door because you have to maintain standards.
Fair enough.
Well,
Fair enough.
And that's the argument is, are they? Because there's a bunch of things that have been happening recently where they're like, oh, test scores in this certain area have been consistently lower, so we're just going to lower our level of whatever. And that's really problematic too. Even just saying it out loud, people get upset when someone says things like that. But it's like, well, the thing isn't like lower the bar to make it easier to get in. It's the raise the level of education and the standards of what you do so that those that are doing the job.
My mantra is do the work.
Yeah.
If you come in and do the work or whatever, I teach a senior level financial management type course, and there's a lot of work in it. I mean, I don't apologize for that. Your seniors do the work. You'll get something out of it. You'll be able to apply it and so on and so forth. But you got to do the work. This is not take it. I signed up for it and paid for it. Therefore, I get to pass.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
So I got to ask, based on that question, Max, and Bob, you probably know the stats for this, and you can share if you'd like, but I'm wondering what the admission rate is per application.
And I apologize, but I don't know the ECU rate. I mean, I'm concerned about me.
Yeah. Are you involved in the admissions process for the school?
No,
not at all.
We recruit and we we make the contacts and we go to the orientations and the open houses and all of those things, but we don't have any active part in the admissions process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you something that'll save you time, and one of the best tips that you could probably give any graduating ECU pirate from the School of Hospitality, what they can do for their business is call Spot On, because Spot On works with all types of businesses, all types of restaurants. They're a POS system, but they can also handle all back of the house matters. They're technology solutions. They're a wonderful company. And it's all handled by a local representative who is a good friend of our show, and they're back. They took a little holiday break, but we are happy to welcome back and just in time for the ECU members. And so, listen, Spot On, you guys know the rigors and the difficulties of coordinating your payroll with your POS system and your inventory systems, and then how do I, log in and log out and make sure all of those are simpatico with each other. Spot On can do that for you. So give them a call. You can email Tanya Manibo, Tanya M at spoton.com, or just give her a call. Her phone number is 858-213-7820. She doesn't mind if you call her directly. That's 858-213-7820.
Anytime of night. Even in the middle of the morning. Doesn't matter.
Because at Spot On, business is personal.
And hey, calling all restaurant and hospitality owners, managers, and employees. This is new. This is new for us. You might have heard Chef Ben Ellsworth talk about his new company, GigPro, a couple of weeks ago. But it's official, folks. GigPro is now a part of the NCFB family of sponsors for the show.
Yeah.
See the lights that are on? This one light over here? That's them.
They paid for that light.
They put that light on.
They actually had somebody come in to install it, one of their temporary workers.
Yeah, well, get to know GigPro. They're changing the way people work and hire. They're not just filling shifts, they're bringing instant solutions to the table for the entire industry. So the whole thing is you sign up if you're an employee in the restaurant industry, the food and beverage industry, and you can look at the array of all the jobs that are available by other restaurants in the industry that put all of their available positions out there. So as Ben said, it's kind of like Airbnb meets Tinder in some way, where you can get hired, you work a job, you get a gig, and the employer pays for it. There's a little bit of a fee that goes to GigPro that comes from the employer, but you, the employee, are working. Essentially, you get all the money. Now, there is a little bit of insurance that covers you while you're there, but it's like 34 cents an hour.
37 cents, I think, to be exact. I don't want to cheat them out of their
You're probably
3
wrong,
cents.
but it's somewhere in there. So either way, you do that, and you pay a little bit here. You have it on your app, and you can tell your friends about it. You can gig. You basically can do a paid stage. So right now, if businesses sign up with our link, you get your first gig on us. That's up to $200. You can use it to cover your first gig to fill. So go to gigpro.com/NCFB or click the link in our show notes and sign up. Thank you. Even with that, these are things that I assume that this management that Matt was speaking of with Spot On, talking about inventory, talking about pricing, talking about your labor and like managing your budgets and all that, that's got to be a cornerstone of what the education comes through with at your school.
Sure. We're very much a hospitality business program, so we're all about making sure that you have the framework for cost controls, for operations, marketing, MIS, and all of the pieces that you're going to need. And probably what we do that's different than a lot of other business departments or whatever is that we look at the whole organization. So it's conceptually we see everything and how everything should fit.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I mean, I'm not disparaging them, but we don't just do finance. We don't just do, one of the functional areas. We make sure that the students get at least a little bit of all. And then what we mix in with it, which is different from many other programs, is not hospitality programs, but at campus is we require a minimum work hours by the time you graduate.
Oh, so like real work.
You have to get an internship, and previous to that, the work experience. They can, find out dealing with the public can be tough. Find out if this is the right industry for you, or that position is the right industry for you. You might be a better back of the house person than you are front of the house. And then so we mix those two things, and it's done well for us. I mean, it's typical for hospitality programs in general to have internship requirements or a number of hours or whatever. And our placement rates pre-COVID anyway were 100%, and the demand now is just as high.
I can imagine, yeah.
For that, because we have more postings than we know what to do with or whatever. I mean, we put them out there, but we don't have enough students to fill the jobs.
How far is the reach for those interns? Like, for example, if our friends in the Triangle or in Charlotte, because Greenville, my geography of the North Carolina is still like somewhat rudimentary, but it's pretty center, right, in the state.
Eastern. East of Raleigh. East of Raleigh.
By about an hour and a half?
Hour and a half. Yeah.
But so Bob, as we were talking, how did you get to this point? Did you yourself work in the food and beverage industry?
I did.
I hope
did.
so.
I went as an undergrad. I went to UMass and got my degree in hotel restaurant management from UMass in the old days.
Wait a minute. Bostonians understand hospitality?
Hey, I don't hear it as much, but I understand what you're saying. I don't have an accent.
There you go, Pop.
But my kids think I do.
Right.
But so, part of their thing is you had to have work experience as well. I worked on Cape Cod. I worked on Martha's Vineyard. I worked in Boston. I worked on campus at UMass, all in food service.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so that was part of it. Ended up as, I went for the money and did waited tables at a place used to be called the Navigator Room in Edgartown in Massachusetts or whatever. And, it was a great job to put me through college or whatever. I paid for most of my college that way from that standpoint. But you also realize that you probably don't want to spend your entire life waiting tables.
It's a tough job.
My legs gave out, and and those types of things or whatever. So we did that. I traveled extensively after college, through Europe, around the world for about 10 months. Backpack, so on and so forth. Came back, landed in Southern California with some friends I had made while traveling. Got a job with a restaurant company there.
What restaurant company?
Trans-Pacific Restaurants at the time. They had Monterey Bay Canners. They had Jolly Roger restaurants. The pirate thing was a theme.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, right.
From that standpoint.
Not a Raider fan, though.
I'm an AFC guy because I was an old AFL guy because that's where the
better
Patriots,
division or better conference.
So that's where they came from. But the old Raiders maybe. I mean,
if Jeff Blake or David Garrard had played for the Raiders, then he would be a fan.
Oh, nice shout out.
There you go. So I worked there and for them and so it was a small regional chain. So worked all over Southern California. Probably, I took a count at one time, probably in 25 of their different restaurants that they had in Southern California.
And you were working in an administrative role at that point?
As a manager.
Okay.
As an assistant manager and whatever. And then they opened up a new brand, the Monterey Bay Canners, which is the mesquite wood charcoal era of, grilling fish and so on and so forth. As you might think with the Monterey title or whatever, it was like, trying to simulate, what Monterey fish houses would look like.
Sure.
I worked at a restaurant called Santa Barbara Grill in San Jose, and there was no connection to Santa Barbara. Like, no one was even from there. And when we asked, why are we called Santa Barbara Grill? They're like, because it has a nice feel, because people like what Santa Barbara's like.
Because Santa Barbara's nice. I mean, it's nice.
Like, it's Central California,
Yeah, I'm like, so is, like, sugar and juicy fruit and marshmallows. Like, are we going to call our restaurant that, too? But, I just thought it was silly. It's like, oh, no real connection. Just when you think Santa Barbara, you think, oh, that sounds nice.
That sounds nice.
Let's go spend a few $100 here.
But I worked for them and became a general manager of the restaurant, and I worked for them for a few more years or whatever. And then I kind of looked at my life and said, ooh, I need to do something else as well. And so I went back to Michigan State, got my MBA there. Worked a little bit, mostly on campus at that point from that standpoint, and then ended up a couple of years later getting my PhD at Michigan State as well.
Wow. So education in itself is also the industry that you're very into, like
absolutely
simultaneous to.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been affiliated with the North Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association, and I'm considered an allied member because I'm not an operator. We have a dining room and all of those things on campus, but I wouldn't call us an operations employer.
Sure. Yeah. So how does that with something hospitality, right? It's not necessarily quantifiable. It's an intangible. So how do you quantify that in an education setting? I mean, the business part is clear, but how do you grade for that? How do you, teach people how to touch tables or how to welcome guests to a hotel or whatever the hospitality setting be?
Nice.
What we're trying to be is, we're hospitality business education. There's no question about that. But we're not just training, but training is an important part. And the training part of that, like we have kitchens, we have a dining room, we do 6 to 8 luncheons a semester or whatever. Kids have to rotate through all the jobs and so on and so forth, and then get evaluated on it by their instructor, but also by the guests, to deal with that. So we kind of pull some of those things into it from that standpoint, and then very much a lot of our stuff is like careers. When I was going to school and you were going to get a job in hospitality, you were probably going to work for Sheraton because that was located in downtown Boston.
Yeah,
the headquarters.
It's a pipeline to the hotel industry.
Exactly, and then the other one was like Red Coach Grills, which was Howard Johnson's.
Right. Okay.
So I mean, those were the two big hospitality companies at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But that's where you were expected to go. But today, part of what like our intro classes do is introduce them to the avenues that they could do. And it's been sliced and diced so much. There's just practically anything that you really want to do. I mean, who would have thought 15 years ago that we would have positions as revenue managers?
Yeah.
It was just not done,
Right.
from that standpoint. And then, when the industry kind of had a marriage with Wall Street, and where the bottom line became a lot tighter and so on and so forth, and from that,
you mean when rich guys realize you could make money off of restaurants?
There you go. And that's the thing. I mean, we're very much that's why we say we're a business program. That it's about making the money. There's nothing less sustainable than a restaurant that doesn't make any money.
Right. Yeah, but for our purposes, I mean, we are the food and beverage podcast, which relates directly to hospitality. Now, that's definitely business, and we encourage the business part. But I think the part here, the thread is, if you feel good at a place, or it's evocative of Santa Barbara, or the people there are very nice, you're going to want to come back, and that's going to beget more business.
Sure.
And so, what I was getting at with that, it's like, and I'll just say, always the struggles that I found in hospitality and managing people, and more so in restaurants and hotels, although I worked my fair share in hotels, is the individual server or concierge, or it's not about you. Mm-hmm. It's about the other person and their needs. Mm-hmm. It's about empathy and observation and awareness. So I almost think maybe as a one of the part of the curriculum should be, how there's that thing where you have to take care of babies in some classes, and they're the play babies.
Oh,
they're not really,
give you
but they
a
cry.
potato and
right.
No, but they're a mannequin, but they actually cry or something like that.
They actually partner you with somebody.
Yeah, and they partner you with somebody.
Because
I think that there's
my person now. Yeah.
I think that there's nothing more than parenthood that can prepare you for hospitality and being empathic and and removing yourself from the equation and be like, what are this other person's needs?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that it is a hard thing to we consider ourselves a discovery major. Because it's not a good fit for everybody. Not everybody should be in the hospitality, and not everybody is a good fit for hospitality from that standpoint, for some of the reasons that you're talking about.
Just some people are very selfish.
I didn't say that.
I don't know how Matt's made it this long in this industry to begin with.
But I think that that's a hard thing to bring out in students but I think that the positive for me in looking at that is that it allows our students to be innovative as individuals and be creative.
Yeah.
So that if they can take, as you know, there's a lot of entrepreneurism that's related to what we do in hospitality and food service, almost specifically, or whatever. And I think that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but a lot of the traits, I think, of innovation and creativity and so on and so forth, I think those are the things that a lot of students will gravitate to.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of the most impactful class I ever took in a educational institution about hospitality came when I was working at, or when I was a student at Musicians Institute, when I was getting my recording engineering certificate. We did all these things. We learned how to set up mics and how to record in Pro Tools and all this other stuff. But one of the classes talked to you about how to conduct yourself in a studio. It was like an etiquette class.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. We all looked at each other. We're like, we're taking etiquette?
Yeah.
And one of the old weathered recording engineers that was turned professor there while he was a teacher. By the way, that guy was one of the engineers on the Appetite for Destruction album from Guns N' Roses. So everyone listened to him. He knew what was up. But he would look at us. He's like, y'all came in here 5 minutes late. You're chewing gum. You stink. You put too much cologne on. All these things are wrong. You don't do any of that. He's like, you need to not be seen. You need to get everything for the artist without them realizing they need it. If the singer starts sounding gravelly like this voice, you better have a goddamn cup of Earl Grey tea ready for them. You got to get some lemons. Basically, he was telling us how to be hospitable to our artists, which the recording studios were spending thousands of dollars an hour to just get this album out. And in that moment, I realized, you got to be spry. And I was a bartender at the time while I was going to school. I'm like, this is all what you learn here. I did well at that school. I actually finished top of my class at that school. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I understood hospitality training, and I was really good at anticipating my performers' needs and what they wanted, and create the environment really comfortably for them. And so, I think that's kind of where you're at, right? What you're asking is are there
class?
Is there a thing do you discuss those types of things, and how does that kind of relate to your student body?
Oh no, we do definitely. I mean, especially like in the senior level classes about interacting with professionals in the industry. My class does live projects, so you're going to deal with clients, so to speak. I mean, we're not being paid, but we're going to call them clients or whatever that their kids are going to produce a report for. In the lower division classes, whatever, there's all kinds of discussion about etiquette, ethics, how to conduct yourself, professionalism. And then the whole, under the umbrella maybe of calling it leadership from that standpoint, that you have to be able to interact with people from all walks of life, no matter where you are. The one thing that I think that, our students probably, and in general for hospitality students as well, would be if they had a second language. Most American students are don't have a second language or whatever, but I mean, you think about, place somebody in a gateway city like Miami. You got to speak Spanish. You speak Spanish.
Yeah.
I mean, from that standpoint. So
California the same way.
So that you do those things, but I think that what we talk to them about is being a professional. Being a professional, and that everybody can define that how they want it.
Yeah.
From that standpoint. But for me, when I tell the kids that come into our program is that our expectation is when you graduate, you're going to get an entry-level management position somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know what company, I don't know what restaurant, hotel,
but you're going to be qualified.
But you're going to be qualified to do that job and to be productive almost immediately in those jobs. But, so you want to be professional, and that's more than knowing how to calculate your food costs. That's more than, reviewing a marketing plan. That's all important, but there's more to it than that, because it's all, even with the innovations and the mobile technology things that are being implemented in a lot of hotels now, and they're even talking robotics in the hotels. But
well, that's
still going to have people.
Yeah. What's the? I want to get into that robotics a little bit more, and actually, I have a question, and I want you to answer on the other side of this. But so I'll give you a minute to think about what is the known toughest class at the hospitality school. So you don't have to answer it right now, because I want to talk to you about something else that is key to hospitality. Because what does everybody want that really makes them feel cozy and comfortable, or helps them digest at the end of a meal?
Bourbon?
Yeah, that's true.
You mean a really warm, hot cup of coffee? Is that what you're talking about?
Or cold brew.
Could be a cold brew. Yeah, like the delicious cup of Joe, the cup of Joe Van Gogh that we're drinking right now. Specifically, Matt, I don't know if you know what we're having. We're having the organic Home for the Holidays 2021 blend from Joe Van Gogh, which is unbelievable. It's so delicious. This particular blend has been spreading good cheer with local Habitat for Humanity affiliates every holiday season since 2009. And every bag sold, Joe Van Gogh donates 50 cents to Habitat for Humanity in Durham, Orange, and Wake counties. So they themselves are proud to partner with the local communities and help encourage you to help build this holiday season with your local Habitat for Humanity. Find your local Habitat for Humanity and catch up on their latest volunteering projects and events by clicking the link in our show notes. Habitat for Humanity transforms lives and communities by helping families purchase safe, decent, and affordable homes.
And just to further that, like the concept of hospitality, and I'll share this with you, Bob. Joe Van Gogh, sponsor of our podcast, great partner. Not only did they say, no, let's give you coffee so you can talk about coffee on your show and your listeners, but like they said, no. You can't just have our coffee. That's not enough. We're going to send you the Chemex and the gooseneck kettle,
the grinder
to really enjoy it.
This is the experience
of it, which is so hospitable.
And this coffee is like, I mean, come on.
Wait, you've had a couple of minutes now to think about it, Bob. What do the students know is like, oh, that's going to be a tough one, or they struggle with?
I mean, this isn't a glory thing, but my senior class in hospitality financial management is not. I'm not everybody's favorite.
I had a feeling you were going to say it's your class.
Let's just put it that way, and it might not be the toughest for all, but I think that there's a built-in aversion to, oh my God, numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we're going to have to, but I mean, my goal is to not make them accountants. It's not to make you a financial wizard or whatever, but you should be able to look at a set of numbers for your competitive set or your internal operations numbers and say, okay, this doesn't look right. and you should be able to pick out the red flag. So, my goal is to really make them thinking managers. If you do the work and apply yourself or whatever, even if you don't get straight A, but you learn something, you learn something and you can think about that. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, food cost is, 74%. Is there a problem there? Do we think?
I'd say so.
I would, and I hope that they can notice those types of things. I mean,
Right.
so that really, and whatever the numbers are for the applied area, and I think that that's part of they can do the math.
Yeah.
Most of them, from that standpoint. But
So that's a question I was going to ask, because there have always been two schools to get into this food and beverage industry. There are the official management schools, and then there's the old cliched school of hard knocks, which is the school I went to at least understand how to work in the food and beverage industry.
Sure.
And a lot of us, many people just work in the industry, and then you work in it, and then it's your segue job until you get your quote unquote real job, which I can't stand when people say that. But it is kind of like a pass through, and then sometimes, like such as yourself, you did this for a long time, and then you said, I find I like this, but I want to be educated. I want to go back into it. You went back into education, but then became your industry. Similar to me, I liked this, and I wanted to attack it from a different side of the industry and get into management and get into ownership and understand these things. How do we connect the dots with the School of Hard Knocks kids and the management kids? Because as the Hard Knocks one over here, I didn't like these suits that came out with their fresh little degree, and they're like, I'm going to tell you what for. And it's like, bro, you have no idea how to run this place. And there is a huge amount of ego in this food and beverage industry, especially from my kin that looks at these studious kids. So
the industry is a funny place because there's all kinds of people that have reached fairly significant levels of responsibility in whatever their company or job is and whatever it happens to be, but never finish their degree. Mm-hmm. Now, they're not going to quit and come back to school just because, it's unless they have the desire to do that. To me, the hospitality business programs give you a quicker path. Mm-hmm. You can balance it and work a thing, but that kind of is like your
fast track.
There's a fast track. There's bumpers on the side to make sure you don't go astray.
Yeah.
From that standpoint. What we're finding now, too, with the since COVID or whatever, we're getting all kinds of inquiries from other service sectors about recruiting our students.
Okay.
So that, it could be, we've gotten calls from healthcare organizations. Not they're not going to be doctors, but, they know how to provide service. I mean, think about any place you go. Think about, all right, the Registry of Motor Vehicles. That's a service organization, whether they want to think so or not.
Right. Well, they definitely don't think so.
But that would be part of, okay, they need to know about service. Last year at our career fair, we did it virtually last year, but Sherwin-Williams signed up for the career fair. And I went, okay, we're a hospitality program. And they said, no, we're all over that. They understand the guest service. They understand the communication. They understand the business.
Yeah. Well,
we're all over that.
Hospitality can live in all walks of life. It's probably a cool thing that a paint company wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. They can come back anytime. I mean, this is good.
Right.
So has your administration or so, have you in the recent times, a lot of this fallout of restaurant industry just being a really gnarly place to work in, has there been a specific approach about discussing some of the avenues of work life, quality of work life in this industry? And I'm speaking, of course, about inequity of pay, cultural, racial, and sexual divide that happens, and it happens so often in the restaurant industry. So is there an intention of broaching those subjects in an education, in a classroom?
Well, yeah, I mean, for us, if we look at the diversity of our students, the biggest diversity piece that we have is that we're 75% women.
Oh, wow.
And that's not atypical of a hospitality program across the country. That the majority of the students in most of these programs are going to be young women. Having said that, it falls off significantly when you talk about people of color or ethnicity and so on and so forth. And and some of it is recruiting and cultural. I worked in Memphis for a while. Went and visited some of the community colleges and the high schools or whatever. And if you've got an African American population or whatever, it still looks a lot like servant to them. And there's a difference between service management and serving. And that was our point, to try to point that out or whatever, to bring those folks in, and hopefully I can recruit them in and have them be managers, have them be the people that are going to be making the decisions. From that,
it's tough. I mean, actually, Elizabeth knows we've been recording. Previous guest of the podcast, Tanya Fritsch, she wrote the book Just the Tip. We've been recording her audio book. We actually just finished the recordings. I'm editing it right now. And going through and listening to all of her tales of just being in the business, you realize how shitty it can be. You realize how you do feel like a servant at times, and you feel like you're being pissed on, and like guys snapping their fingers. And of course, like Tanya, she's an attractive woman, and like getting like pinched, getting prodded, getting all this stuff. I mean, Elizabeth, you're shaking your head too. You've worked in the business for a long time. I'm talking to Elizabeth, who works with us, and she also has worked with me at restaurants. But that's really challenging to like live in this industry and then kind of like go home feeling good about yourself after being kind of shit on all day. And that's like part of the message of her book. The opening of her book is, if you've never been in this industry, then this book is for you, because I feel like everybody should at least work in this industry for a moment, or at least read this so you get it. And if you've been in this industry, well, then you can commiserate with me about all the things that have happened. But it's a tough part to say, like, this is where I'm service, which obviously has like all of those like potential negative feelings along with it, is what you do, but you have to feel good about it at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So like, yeah, how
Well,
do you teach that?
We open the discussion in many classes that we teach or whatever with the students or whatever, and just talk about, okay, so there's pay inequities in the industry. And the people at the top, let's see who the CEOs of the big hotel companies and the big, and there's not many women. That they're just not there or whatever. And I've got 75% young women that are going to graduate with a management degree or whatever, want to go into the industry. What do I tell them? So
that makes you think that in the future there will be more women in that business.
You would think.
You would think.
You would think that there would be that. Okay, that we're going to push it from the bottom,
right,
so to speak, up into the ranks or whatever. Easier said than done. From that standpoint, the industry, I think in general struggles with that. But I think that we have those conversations. We do a lot. We bring a lot of advisory board members in. We bring a lot of recruiting companies in, so on and so forth. Aini has been to campus multiple times or whatever, and she just happens to be particularly good, in talking to folks and sharing her story.
She's worked at the top of the hospitality chain.
That's right. Yeah. So that, but
like
she's a good example for that. But ask the tough questions. Get the conversations out or whatever. We don't tend to talk politics. We don't tend to talk a little bit. It comes up. From that standpoint.
I think it kind of has to come up
in religion and stuff like that. But
I think that can't be a no-no anymore.
But if you're talking about labor, you're talking about who are we working with and so on, and what do we want to get accomplished here, so that this is a career path, or this degree from ECU could be a career path for you to be CEO or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good point to jump off and gloat a little bit. So who are some of your prize alumni, and what have they done?
Oh, gosh. Well, see, for me, I claim anybody that works in the industry, even if they didn't get a hospitality degree.
Oh, okay.
So that's
everybody. All of them. Jose Andres, Danny Meyer. Yeah.
Tom Colicchio.
You did have to go through to ECU, I think. But having said that, you look at some of the big names that we can reach out to. James Maynard, who was one of the founders of Golden Corral.
Oh, yeah.
He's an ECU grad.
Oh, nice.
He's a pirate.
Standard here.
Yeah,
in the state.
he and his wife are pirates, and that we have the Golden Corral Culinary Center on campus.
Oh, nice.
And that very much through his good graces and so on and so forth. We've got a variety of folks that are independent. She's Wendy Jackson is one of our alums. She works at Rocky Mount. She's got Wendy Jackson Catering and Cakes. She's quite a skilled baker and so on and so forth. We've just invited her to be on our advisory board, and she's accepted. My advisory board is not pay to play. It's I want you to bring something to the board that maybe is going to be good for students, good for recruiting, good for something. But everybody's there has something that they're bringing to the table from that standpoint. We've had folks that we have a gentleman that just left Interstate Hotels a short time ago. He was chief information officer for interstate hotels. That's a huge job.
Yeah.
From that standpoint. So we've done some of that. We've had folks that have created apps.
Okay.
It's just a few years back or whatever, when I was still trying to figure out what an app was, but he's explaining it to me, and he had graduated, and he said, well, so I have all the clubs in here. So if you, on the bars or whatever, so the app can tell you how busy each bar is and whether you're going to have to wait or you can get in.
Oh, nice.
And I was just like,
to maximize your drinking potential.
Okay, well, that was the goal, I think. But but good for him. I don't know how to make an app, so that worked out for me from that standpoint. I mean, we have folks that have been at the corporate office of Marriott and so on and so forth. So and we have a reasonable number of folks that are have that entrepreneurial spirit and have small restaurants and or places around around the state. But we're also happy to. They can work their internship anywhere. So we've had students do their internships in Alaska.
Right.
They got the right job and wanted to do it. I said, yeah, go for it.
And then you can just do your education online.
They typically are doing that in the summer.
Your classroom.
So they may or may not take online classes or whatever, but they can do that. I mean, a lot of our students will do Disney for a semester, so they might also take at least 2 classes. But that's the work balance adjustment that the students have to make, especially in COVID. Everybody's working, but that's not an okay excuse for not getting your work done in class.
Right.
Well, I'm working. I'm sorry.
Everybody else
manage
is too.
it.
Yeah.
Manage it or whatever. But if you're going to do both of those things full time, one of them you have to back off on, really. So don't take a full load from school if you're going to work full time. Or if you're going to take a full load at school, then don't work 40 hours.
Right.
So there has to be a balance there, because one of them is going to not make out well.
Yep.
In the final analysis as we deal with those folks. But I mean, I don't know that we don't have Guy Fieri stature that I'm aware of. Anyway, if I knew, I would love it.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, but very successful entrepreneurs, regionally especially.
Yeah.
Get a lot of folks that we get a lot of Virginia kids, obviously mostly North Carolina. And then Southeast in general, but we have folks that, basically each year that are from Maine to us. It's mostly not west, though. We don't get many from Tennessee or going that way or whatever. It's like Virginia North that'll come back down. I mean, and part of it is good for ECU. It's a good price point.
Right. Sure.
Well, it makes me think like perhaps some of these aforementioned, issues that have come around with being in a restaurant, like maybe if more people were educated in the system of hospitality, understand kind of the code of conduct and the way things should roll, then maybe the industry would kind of correct itself a little bit, and be a better place to work. Because many of us do this industry because they didn't have time, money, energy, or didn't feel like they wanted to go to school. I mean, school is not for me. I was not a good student, although great test taker. I aced all my tests, never did my homework. And I just was like, no, I'm busy in the moment. I want to do like my thing. I was selfish, whatever. And that's also kind of like the mentality of being a server or bartender is like, I want to make money now. I want that cash in hand, which now that doesn't really happen anymore because most of the time your tips are all electronic payment and you don't really go home with tips, and then they're all put on a check and then you get that check every 2 weeks. And so joke's on you now. You're getting paid the way everybody gets paid. So who knows? Maybe that, in effect, will also change the mentality of the respect for the job, the idea of the job, and why the industry works the way it does. I know for me, just about to open a place, we're talking about how to pay people fairly, and whatever that means, and how to distribute tips to a certain point to where everyone's being compensated, and I put fairly like in quotes because it's kind of hard rule to follow.
What's fair?
So is that a course in school? Do we talk about labor paying? Do we talk about distribution of tips? Is there like a new rule, or are we thinking of this stuff?
Well, we do. We teach a course in human resources and hospitality management. Clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a dedicated required course for everybody. I don't know. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how much time they talk about tipping and, what that is an issue
this should be approached
from a labor standpoint, but it's an excellent point from that standpoint. I mean, I mean, back in the day, this is a long time ago, but it's tip credit, if you remember, and all of that or whatever. It was all, mostly cash, and then some credit cards or whatever, and stuff like that. That made a huge difference. I mean, to me, and be able to afford school and do whatever. I mean, and there's also the difference between beach people, and I'm a beach person,
right,
versus the ski people. Ski people never had any money.
Right. Skiing's expensive.
Skiing's expensive. They need equipment or whatever, and beach people always had money in their pocket.
Yeah.
So there was the difference or whatever to look at those types of things. It's a great topic from that, and we tend to bring in folks for that. I mean, to talk about the practicalities in running a restaurant and you having a tipped thing. And then we'll also go the case study route and do some things. Even historically, you look at a place like.
I'll give you my appearance fee, and we'll work that out. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, like Disneyland back in the day, no tipping.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't allow it.
Right.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you today what the actual piece is. I used to work with a guy in Southern California that, I mean, he worked.
But they just overcharged on everything, so it was there. But that's not too different than like the Danny Meyer method. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks that know this, but I think that they went away from it.
Yeah.
But Danny Meyer, for years, was notably known for like not accepting tips, but he folded like an extra 20% in all the cost of all the items on his food,
sure,
so that it essentially was there, and then he just paid his people.
Well, service compris.
Exactly. It's all perception.
Yeah.
It's all perception. And Danny Meyer, his name should be mentioned on an episode about hospitality. If I could recommend anybody that cares about wanting to learn about hospitality, I don't read books. But the only book that I really ever think about when I think about hospitality is his book, Setting the Table.
Yeah.
I got a copy here at the kitchen that I have given to everybody, and like it boomerangs itself back to me. It's like it's still back. But people read this book, they come back, they learn a lot from it. I learned so much from it. And like the biggest thing is the customer is not my priority. My employees are my priority. Because if I take care of my employees, they will take care of my customers.
Well, because that's the issue that the industry is struggling with now. I still sit on a couple of national committees, and they talk to a lot of the operators and so on and so forth that are on scholarship committees and things like that. And and they're just like, well, we have to get these kids back to the industry. They left to go work in retail or whatever. And I said, that's not their fault, first of all. I said that a lot of those jobs just disappeared for them, and they needed to get the thing. And I said, but they don't want to come back. And I'm just like, you're going to make the job better.
Yeah.
You have to make it more attractive for them to come back and want to be in the industry. They like the industry. I mean, some studies that are out there that will say that 85% of the people that are still in the hospitality industry want to stay, but
Well, as much as people want to shit on, the job, it's also some of the most fun you can have as a profession, right? I mean, like
while working, yeah.
While working, I mean, you're around people that are like you. You're all typically it's like a young person's game. You like to be social. You like to get out there. You like to chat it up with people. You're not sitting behind a desk. You're walking around. You're tasting all the new food that the chef is preparing. The bartender's got this new cocktail that you're interested in. The sommelier is talking about all of the fantastic aspects of wine, and you're learning so much about this. Meanwhile, you're kind of walking around. You're being active. It's a fun environment, and then we all know that, like, typically afterwards, when you close, you go out with the said people, and you have the best time ever, and it's a great camaraderie of people. Now, obviously, a lot of problems can come from that too.
No, what are you talking about?
I mean, every now and then, someone might like someone, and then the other person doesn't like that person. No, but
it's all milk and honey.
But that's the thing is, like, people shit on this industry, but at the same time, and it's even going back to Tanya's book, she's like, all of this, I bitched for the last 200 pages, but it's still my favorite place to be.
Right.
And I still have so much fun being in this industry. And it's true. I mean, it's like you have some of the best memories you'll ever make by working in the hospitality industry. So it's
great
what
stories.
keeps coming back. Yeah, people coming back.
Yeah. I mean, and it is. I mean, I think that's the attraction for most of the kids that have come to school. They didn't discover it. They said, I came to school to come to the hospitality. Unprompted, one of our graduates who now works for a huge club in Arizona. She got a great job out there, but one of the advisory board members said, well, so all right, so how did you end up here? And she said, well, I'm from Rocky Mount or whatever, and we've got one of the best schools in the country right here. Why would I go someplace else. And I went, and I'm just sitting in the background going, good
Yeah.
girl, and I didn't even pay for that.
Can we record that?
Say that again on
Yeah.
tape. I mean, but it's but she loved the industry. She wanted to be in the industry. And the industry they've adjusted somewhat. I mean, back in the day, it was like, if you were going to apply to a Hyatt, you better show up in a dark suit and hair appropriately cut and shaven and so on and so forth or whatever. They've adapted. I did a small piece for just an opinion piece on tattoos, that are, is that acceptable or not or whatever. And I did a quick poll of my advisory board members. Is this allowed, not allowed or whatever? And it's a couple other people and I know, and they said, oh, no, this is okay.
Yeah.
This is okay now.
Definitely adjusted.
Because we're going to adjust.
Different colored hair.
Yeah, I mean, it's
piercings.
Yeah, I mean, now back when I was a restaurant manager, first thing, one of the things after you hire is like, okay, rings, one.
Yeah.
And it should be an engagement or a wedding band. That's it. But this is a long, and then no danglies, just posts. For earrings, that's all. And your hair has to be pulled back.
Yeah.
And otherwise you can't work.
Yeah. Well, that's also for health reasons, right?
But fair enough. But I mean, there was all of the
a lot of industry standards.
No stuff or whatever.
No piercings.
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Now it's much more
Let's be
commonplace.
honest. Do you really, as a customer, want to see your server with a nose piercing, like dangling all around, and then they're bringing the food? Like, it's not like it's going to add to the boogers in your food, but it just kind of feels like it's going to.
I mean, I don't want to see anything dangling out of somebody's nose.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think that's fair.
But I mean, that doesn't mean I'm against piercings. I just, they're serving me. I don't want to see it.
But I also think, going back to what you were saying before or whatever, is knowing, having the customers perhaps be better educated to know what the job is and to know what they can expect fairly from the employees. We go out to eat and, as a family or whatever, my kids are all grown now or whatever. And if we get a horrible service moment, the first thing that my son does is grab my arm and say, Dad, let it go. And I just went, I'm not going to yell at anybody. I never yell at anybody. Yeah. I'm too old to yell at people anymore. But I mean, I just but if you don't tell them, they don't know.
Right.
They need to be able to fix these types of things or whatever to be able to deal with that. But then you see a guest who is just rude. That's also not acceptable.
Sure.
As a manager,
kind of like where you see humanity at its most primal.
I mean, I used to tell my employees, don't. The second somebody raises their voice or uses a foul word on you, you come get me.
Yeah.
You walk away and just come get me. That's not your job. You shouldn't have to deal with that.
That's where the old adage of the customer is always right has changed also.
Yes.
Because it's not the case anymore that the customer is always right.
No, and that's where, part of why the industry sometimes gets, shat upon is because the customers don't respect the industry and don't respect the people that are bringing them their food and beverage, because they almost look at it like, oh, well, you're serving me, you're my servant, or it's got that mentality. So we need to break through that as well. So as much as the hospitality industry needs to be, as hospitable as possible, we also need to lean on our guests and say, hey, respect,
educate
this
the
is my job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know we're running short on time here and we're going to wrap this up, but I would just want to touch on one other thing, because it's not just the School of Hospitality, it's the School of Hospitality Leadership. So that's one thing that is kind of a hot button issue these days, is leadership, and how do you teach leadership, So can you just give us your elevator pitch?
We use leadership as kind of the umbrella of everything else that we teach. That might include professionalism, might include ethics. We give them opportunities within class as best we can to be in leadership positions. Doesn't require that it could be, your leadership could also be with your church. It could also be with your club, your sorority, your whatever it might happen to be. But to
fantasy
bring
football league?
Could be. If you were the commissioner of your
Max
fantasy
is an
football,
unethical
you'd
commissioner.
be okay. You'd be okay.
I'm the commissioner of our league, by the way. Matt and I are pitted against each other. Next week, we'll find out who wins.
But go Patriots! I don't know what else to say.
Well, Bob, this has been great.
Yeah.
And
well, before we get out of here,
Yeah.
we got to give love to our other two sponsors who are fantastic people that keep the lights on here. One, the Triangle Wine Company, who has been servicing the community for years now, years and years. I don't even know, maybe for 15 years, maybe 20, maybe 83 years. They've been doing it for a long time because, but, go to Triangle Wine Company for all of your wine, beverage, beer, cocktail mixing needs. You can even sit down at their table and get a nice pint, chat it up with everybody. They have hospitality. They love talking to people. They love asking you questions about the wines you're going to have, the dinner you're going to prepare, and engage with the guests. That's why they're a great company, and that's why we love working with them. And while you're there, you can also buy things that they sell, sometimes frozen items.
Like proof alcohol ice cream?
Yes.
So I can put my booze in my dessert.
Yeah, because holding a glass of liquor and holding a spoon...
too much. That is overwhelming.
Yeah, we're lucky that proof alcohol ice cream solved that problem.
my life has been better. Yeah, so proof alcohol ice cream puts your booze in dessert, and you think differently about dessert. It's 7% alcohol, but it's creamy, rich, delicious ice cream at the same time.
Yeah, because I think, oh shit, I'm going to get drunk off of this. So go to proofalcoholicecream.com, click the links in our show notes, and Professor O'Halloran, you are going to go home with some proof alcohol ice cream.
Well, thank you. That's great.
I mean, I don't know what you're going to do with this ice cream. You got an hour and a half drive back home, so...
I might actually have something in the car to put it in. Yeah, I think I'm in good shape.
Oh, he's prepared, folks.
Yeah,
he is prepared.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate everything you do. And so I guess go to ECU School of Hospitality Leadership. You will learn about eating and drinking very merrily. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the NCFB podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.